a little bit late. She had to drop something off. So she should be here soon. Look, these bills have different subject matter, so I thought we would take HB 626 first. It's the Prince George's County Delegation Bill, the Prince George's County Vehicle Height Monitoring System. This bill is extraordinarily important, as was the original Baltimore bill, to get right, because if you go back in time, you can see when we don't get these things right, they can kind of become really big and messy. So, and we are live now. So just very quickly, today is March 19th. Welcome to the Motor Vehicle Subcommittee within the Environment and Transportation Committee. And we have 4 bills today. So right now we're talking about House Bill 626 again. So what the intent here for us to do is to amend this Prince George's County vehicle height bill so it comports with the same policy of work that we've already done for Baltimore. And this will make sure everybody has a seat at the table, also best practices thus far. And I know that Patrick was working on the amendments.
David, I got to run to the printer real quick.
Okay. It brings a lot of people in on the bill, particularly the truckers, to make sure that they have a say, which they, as long as we go the Baltimore County route, they already have a say from previously. So I think they're good with the spirit of what we are intending to do with this bill. And as soon as Patrick gets back from the printer, we can go there. I think
Mr.
the only
Chair.
difference is the delegate brought up is just the municipalities, which I've had some conversations with Patrick about. So we can go through them. Yes. Harrison.
May I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
And it just came to me, with a bill like this, when you have like you have a sign that says no through trucks on a roadway, but you continue to have the trucks just traversing through, this would be the type of bill that a locality, Prince George's County or municipality in Prince George's County could use to try and enforce that.
That's correct. That's exactly what this bill is designed to do, to allow the trucks that are coming in for deliveries that are supposed to be there, but the trucks that are using this as an opportunity to cut through to stop them from doing that. I should note, and Patrick can talk a little bit more about it, traditionally, these cameras aren't perfect. So we do have some places in the bill just made to make sure that if there are mistakes made, that there are easy ways to get out of any tickets that are issued. Patrick, per that, I don't know if you want to talk about anything in the history of this stuff, or you want to just get straight into the meat of the bill.
I probably just should mention that Delegate Harrison mentioned no through trucks and the like on signage, but trucks are allowed on every road in the state if their destination requires the use of that road. You think of the easy example is if, you have a neighborhood where you wouldn't think of trucks, but moving trucks are allowed there if you're moving in. So then that's why we get a lot of false positives on these cameras. And that's why the committee has standards that they apply to these types of legislation, both for Baltimore City and Baltimore County. And the amendments that we put on, we'll put it on for Prince George's County.
Okay. Any other questions before we start to get into comporting the 2 bills, or this bill to look like Baltimore's? All right, Patrick.
You didn't see my hand, huh?
Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't see your hand. Sorry, my screen is cut off.
That was a big screen hand too.
Oh, sorry. Delegate Jacobs, please.
All right, the amendments, I'm just looking at this one page of it. Did they address the concerns of Maryland Motor Truck? And
yeah, my understanding is yes.
because I know they weren't on the original work group or something.
Well, Lou
They
has
weren't
not
on the
seen,
original.
Lou is on this call. You might want to talk to Lou. In fact, Lou, I will email you the amendments right now.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, I haven't gotten a copy of the final amendments, but I know that was clearly the intent,
Right.
was to try and address those concerns. So.
I believe, Lou, that these amendments will make you happy.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
Delegate
Mr.
Jacobs, to my
Right
earlier,
now.
I'm
Delegate
good.
Jacobs, to my earlier statement, that's basically what the Baltimore, kind of pulling from what we did with Baltimore. That's what that.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were saying, but I just had to verify. That's all. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Patrick?
Might want to let Lou take a quick look at the amendments and maybe go to the next bill.
Okay, we can go. That's fine. What I would like to do on the next bill is let's take, I guess we can take all, well, these are all speed monitoring bills. And I think the important thing on these speed monitoring bills is making sure that we have standards that apply across the board, no matter what. So there are 3 bills here. I think the 2 bills that are probably the most similar would be House Bill 967 and House Bill 971. And so Patrick, one of the big pieces for these bills, and I know it's important to our chair, and I kind of almost like to call it the Wyville Amendment. And it essentially sets in place standards so that as you are approaching these speed cameras, it's a more proactive approach. So they'll put up monitors that tell you what your speed is as you approach these cameras. And I think that's important. So Patrick, do you want to talk about how we'll talk about 967 first?
Yeah, Molly, do you have the standards that I sent you earlier?
Yep.
Yeah, it should be on the screen. Can
Is
you
it on the
see?
screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. These are the general standards that ENT has developed over the years for putting cameras in specific locations, not for the county and municipal programs, not for the work zone programs, but for specific locations. Right now, the only one we have is Indian Head Highway. The proponent must show unduly hazardous conditions, must show that the speed monitoring systems will be effective in addressing these conditions, that must have a device that displays real-time posting of the speed, the Wyville Amendment, as Delegate Fraser-Doggo refers to. Revenue from citations may not be paid to the local jurisdiction except for to cover costs. Revenues above costs may only be used to address the hazardous conditions, and the program must be subject to a sunset. And that's appropriate. I mean, this is applicable to the next 2 bills.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Yes. Delegate LaBeouf.
I know one of the really important, well, they're all important pieces. The revenue, it may not be paid to the local jurisdiction in question. So where does the revenue go?
Well, it goes to fix the underlying conditions that are making the road hazardous, usually through SHA.
Okay, so it goes to SHA?
With earmarked for the specific road in question.
So like Montgomery County's camera program, I know I should know this, but I don't. Where does the revenue go?
Well, that goes to the county. That's not a camera for a specific location.
Oh, for specific, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry. I
They're just
mistook that part. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Patrick, can we go through the how we've amended?
Okay. Start with
967.
967 Baltimore City. Okay.
Yeah, we'll do Bridges bill first, 967,
Okay, and
83.
that bill, if we look on, hold on a second here.
Page 2.
Page 2, no problem. Page 2 has the Baltimore City, I think, when they were drafting this bill, knew of our standards, so much of their bill does meet our standards. They send the fines to fix the road. That's on page 2. That's in the bill. But they eventually sunset that. We took out that sunset, but we sunsetted the whole bill after 4 years and 9 months. Then the amendments, the bottom of page 4, they require the signage that's required for Indian Head Highway, and require the Wyville amendment, the real-time speed
Monitor.
The seat is like the speed sentry where it tells you the time.
Tells you how fast you're going as you drive by.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um,
Speed sentry.
Patrick, this is Mitch Baldwin from the Maryland State Highway Administration. Could
Yes,
you go
Mitch.
back to the previous page?
Sure.
So the Interstate 83 in the city is actually not maintained by SHA. So as much as we would love the money, it probably should go to the city.
That's, I understood. That's about that, and
Yeah.
I think as long as it's earmarked to make the road safer, it should be, doesn't matter who really administers it.
Agreed.
That's
Yeah.
page 2, actually, I think,
yeah, that's page 2.
29.
Yeah, Baltimore
You could
City.
strike the State Highway Administration, and, I mean, there's no need to even have them as a pass-through or anything like that. Just send it to Baltimore City, but earmark it.
Yeah.
We have a couple Baltimore City delegates. Does that sound problematic at all?
No, I
So
think-
that means,
Sorry. Who wanted to speak?
no, I'm sorry. I was just saying, so then that paragraph will need to be changed slightly. Is that correct, to say that it goes, it based, where the earmark is, the city earmark for, safety upgrades for 83? Does that need to change any?
Yeah, it says right now, that's in the bill, to send it to the State Highway Administration. Mitch is right. The State Highway Administration doesn't handle 83 in Baltimore City. And it would probably make sense just to send it to Baltimore City earmarked for improvements on 83.
So you
I
can
think
do
that's
that.
acceptable. Can we ask Liam to weigh in if at all possible? Mr. Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. Liam, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're fine with that. That totally makes sense from our end. It is, the city is unique in that, we do maintain 83 and all state highways.
Should we
go
just
down
send it to the Baltimore City Department of Transportation?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds good.
Okay, Patrick, you can take care of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far as the sunset, can we scroll down to the bottom? So it would essentially, the speed camera authorization would sunset. Is that what I'm hearing?
For 83, yes.
Okay.
That's the standard that we use for specific location bills.
Okay.
And of course, we'll revisit it at that time.
Yeah, I think as long as there's an opportunity to revisit it, I think a few years to evaluate, the effectiveness of the program, it'll be good to just discuss that with this subcommittee and ENT when the time comes.
And I will tell you, Liam, in most cases, if a program is, very successful, it goes through pretty quickly. It's just an extension to the sunset.
Okay.
The delegate will come up and say, this bill is sunsetting. It's been very successful. They talk about some stats, how it's successful, that kind of thing. And then it goes right through pretty quickly. Delegate Healy.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's also theoretically that extra revenue to make the road safer will have its effect as well over
Absolutely. Yeah.
time. And so that's part of the evaluation is that, well, is it really still needed or not? Because they've made engineering changes that make it more safe.
Yeah,
Very, very good point.
that's a fair point.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good with those amendments.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions? So just for the record, we talked about the funds being remitted to Baltimore City. You're going to take care of that. So when we vote on these amendments, that's part of what we're doing. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendments, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions on the bill as amended?
Move favorable.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the favorable, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
I'm opposed.
Showing 2 in opposition. Delegate Parrott and Delegate Jacobs. Okay, bill passes. Great. Now let's go straight to House Bill 971 since it's similar in nature. Talbot County Speed Monitoring Systems. Do you have that up, Patrick? So we're going to amend this bill to do the same thing with the active speed devices, right, Patrick?
Yes, this is for one device in Oxford and Talbot County at a specific location, namely Oxford Road and Bonfield Road Avenue, excuse me. And the amendments add the provision that directs the money to, again, cover costs and then fix the problem. Although according to testimony, they don't think they're going to have any extra money here. We do the Wyval amendment, if you will, with the speed indicator and the required signage. And we had the sunset 5 years.
Okay. So it puts it in the same posture as 967.
Well, the same standards. They're different.
All right, same standards. Okay. Are there any questions about any of the amendments?
I have one
Seeing none? Yes, Delegate Healy.
I have one question. The Baltimore bill that we just discussed had a sunset at 4 years and 9 months, and this one is 5 years. Why is that different?
That's just what the Baltimore bill came in as.
Oh, okay.
5 years is kind of the standard we've set on unless the committee chooses differently.
Okay.
Any
I
questions?
move
on this?
favorable
Okay, thank you.
Second.
on the amendment.
All
Is it
those in
on the-
favor on the amendment? That's correct. Thank you. All those in favor, the favorable on the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, any abstentions on the bill as amended?
Move favorable.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor of the favorable signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Any abstentions? Okay, let the record show that Delegate Parrott and Delegate Jacobs voted no on both of those bills. We'll make sure we let the Delegate Motz know. That's a joke. You voted against, oh, never mind. Okay.
I'll call in
So-
myself if you'd like.
All right, so we did those two bills and we did we stopped to do HB 262, right? I mean, 626.
You want to go back to that?
Yeah, let's go back to that and then we'll finish off with Delegate Wells's bill since we have Lewis here, right? Lewis Boyer, yeah.
Lou, have you had a chance?
Yes, sir. I did review them and I think they're very fair. They appear to incorporate, what we did in Baltimore County, and I appreciate that very much.
Wonderful.
Move the amendments.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor of the amendments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, as the bill as amended.
Move favorable.
All those-
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the favorable on the bill, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, bill passes. Okay, House Bill 941, Delegate Wells's bill, Baltimore City speed limits establishments. This bill is, I think, ready to go. We have two amendments for the bill that I think everybody has agreed to, that removes any opposition to the bill. I have had some really good conversations with Delegate Boyce, and I think that at the moment, she brought up some really good points. And I think we addressed some of these in the bill, but I wanted to just see if Delegate Boyce is where she is and if she has any comments. Okay. And just so you know, while you're doing that, the two amendments are, the First Amendment is that if the
There's a
city-
mistake, and that's my fault. First Amendment is on page 2. In line 12, it will say Baltimore City may decrease. And it's in the, I got it in a purpose paragraph, but I forgot it in the body of the bill.
Okay. So you're going to fix that.
Change from established to decrease, which is testified to is 90-something% of what they would be doing anyway.
Yeah.
But what if, so what if they decrease it and then they want to increase it back to where it was? Do they have to then do an engineering study?
Yes.
Thank you. I mean, I still have, and I mentioned this to the chair, and he definitely heard me. I just question the scrutiny of this bill compared to other bills somewhat in the same way that have kind of done the same thing. The only difference is we have this complete streets package that people are a little unfamiliar with, and I get that. I just want to be sure that when we are working on these bills, that we're doing it with some parity. And so I think to Delegate Lehrman's point, I mean, there's this fear that we're going to also increase speeding when the whole purpose of complete streets is to make livable cities and livable places among pedestrians and bike riders and, you know, cars and transportation. And so I guess I understand the concern, but it doesn't feel like it's really, it doesn't, the amendment doesn't feel warranted. But I think to Delegate Lehrman's point, if something is lowered to 15 miles an hour and it needs to be, it goes back to maybe 20, because maybe 20 is the, you know, comparable speed and not 15 above 25 than before. So, you know, how does that hamper the city?
Yeah, thank you. I'd also, Delegate Boyd, I echo everything Delegate Boyd said. I also, like, Baltimore City, we maintain all of our roads. There are no state maintained roads in Baltimore City. And, you know, we've done now, you know, a years long process with this Complete Streets program. And I just, yeah, I mean, I guess I feel the same. I think if we change it to Baltimore City may decrease the maximum speed limit, then if we decrease something but want to, you know, increase it by 5 miles per hour, but still leave it, or like even back to where it was before, we have to do an engineering study. And I just, you know, and we will do lots. I think we will do some engineering studies. It's not like we will never do engineering studies after this, but it will certainly decrease the costs and be able to implement a Complete Streets program in a more cost-effective way and quicker. Because one of the things that happens is, you know, I'm sorry, I keep going back to my street. My street is so narrow and the speed limit on it right now is 25 miles per hour. And because that's the lowest the state allows us on our city controlled roads to put the speed limits. I mean, my street is so, it's hard to even explain how narrow my street is. And it's not an alley, it's a normal street. But I just, you know, you don't need an engineering study to tell you that the speed limit on that should, you don't even need Complete Streets, frankly, that shouldn't be 25 miles an hour. So I feel like putting in may decrease makes this much more complicated and could potentially hamper what they're trying to do, and just demonstrates like a real lack of trust in a perfectly competent you know, city DOT to figure out what the speed limit should be on the roads that it is 100% responsible for.
Mr. Chief, can I say something?
Sure, Delegate Love, please.
Thank you. I hear you, and I respect everything that you're saying. The only thing that I will add is that it took us 3 years to get through, I could be wrong on that number, a decrease in speed limit in Montgomery County for our county roads. And we had to go with an engineering and traffic study. So we're allowed to decrease based on an engineering and traffic investigation. So this is not in any way, the scrutiny here is not in any way an attack on Baltimore City. It's the same, I think, that Montgomery County had. So I just throw that out there as well.
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, I understand that. I don't think you guys are attacking the city.
Yeah, I just think this hampers the city. I think it just hampers the city when they're trying to unhamper itself from being able to totally control, as they do, control and pay for and monitor their roads. So I don't think this helps, and I don't think this clarifies. I think this may end up hurting us. So.
Okay, the only thing that I'm sorry, does somebody else want to speak?
I was just going to say that I thought we agreed when we talked about this before that we didn't, that there wasn't a need for an amendment.
The only thing I will tell you is that several people have asked for this amendment, and the only other thing that I would say is, to Delegate Love's point, in Montgomery County, we can't lower the speed limit without an engineering study. So this would give Baltimore City the opportunity to do that, where Montgomery County can't.
They've already gone through it using the Complete Streets process.
Yeah.
Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I think that is really the key thing about is the Complete Streets report or program, because I think one of the issues is that none of us have actually seen that yet, and it's being talked about, it's about to be adopted and all of that. So, you know, I agree. I think that they've probably done all that they need to do, and I don't have any problem supporting it in any way that will be helpful. But I do think that the discomfort that some people have is because they don't really understand what the Complete Streets program is and how it operates.
And it did pass the council.
It did. It passed on Monday. It's adopted now, so it's the law.
And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we held the bill, because I know that they were about to do that, and I think it puts us in a much better posture as policymakers to, although not everybody is very familiar with Complete Streets, it just puts us in a better posture to say, well, it's now law in Baltimore City. So, look, this is what I would say. I think this is a complicated and this is a controversial issue. I have talked with the delegate Wells, about this, and she is perfectly comfortable with both this amendment and the other amendment being on the bill. So I guess it's really kind of the will of the committee. There are as I've said, some concerns, and this allays all of those concerns. If the subcommittee wants to pursue the bill without the amendments, I will just say that that's the will of the subcommittee. But it does mean that there could be problems down the road with this bill. And when I talked to the Delegate Wells, she was fine with the two amendments, this one and the second one. So I would say it's up to the subcommittee. If we don't want to adopt these amendments, that's fine. But there may be rough going down the road.
I had a question.
I'll get Parrott.
Am I reading this right, that the only thing this bill does is lines 12 through 14 and gets rid of the need for a traffic engineering study?
And in line 12, established should be decrease. That's the amendment. It doesn't say it on your copy, but just so you know.
The Baltimore City will be able to do it without a study. They'll be able to lower their speed limit.
Okay. I guess I just have comments on the bill itself then, but I could wait on that until we start talking about the bill.
Okay. We're still on the amendments. Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I just want to ask the delegates from Baltimore City if this amendment was tweaked so that it would have the flexibility to go back where it was before they lowered it without any further ado. Would that be acceptable?
I would I think I would be acceptable to that. I just don't want the city to be hampered where they then have to do a traffic engineering study to potentially put the speed limit back to what it was, if, for instance, they had to. I think I'd be acceptable. I'd accept that.
Delegate Learman?
To increase.
Yeah, I
any
agree.
speed
That's fine.
limits.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that,
I'm sorry to throw a monkey wrench in here.
go ahead. Throw
Mr.
the
Chair, if
wrench.
I may.
Throw the wrench
Toss
in.
my monkey wrench in. I have two thoughts, and they seem somewhat contradictory. Above, it says Calvert County may decrease. And I think what we're putting in this year is Montgomery County may decrease. So there may be some inconsistency there. Now, the contradictory part of what I'm going to say is, you know, as I understand it, from what I'm hearing from my Baltimore City colleagues, is that Baltimore City is looking holistically at their streets and what speed limit makes the most sense for them. So it seems to me, you know, that on one street, they may want to go down from, 20 to 25, but on another one, maybe it can handle 30. So, they want to make the adjustments according to what the street can handle based on the analysis in Complete Streets. And so I would be willing to defer to my colleagues as to what makes sense to give Baltimore City the authority to do what they need to do to have safe streets.
Okay, I think that means we're all in agreement on this amendment. And I think that Delegate Healy has brought up a great opportunity for us to circle around that. Does everybody verbally pretty much agree on this amendment?
Yes.
Yeah.
The amendment that
Delegate
Delegate
Healy
suggested.
offered.
Yeah,
Yes.
the amended
Yes.
amendment.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so Patrick, are we, is that something that you from a law perspective, feel comfortable drafting? I think it makes a lot of sense.
I can draft it, sure.
Okay,
Okay.
do you see any hurdles or any problems with that amendment? I don't, but then I'm not a lawyer, so.
Can we move the bill out of subcommittee today though, so we can vote on it in full committee later today?
That's
Yes.
exactly what we're trying to
All
do.
of these bills will be on
Yeah.
full committee later today.
We don't want to hold anything. I want to try to get, this is the last one, and I know.
Well, you got to get to the second amendment here.
Yes.
Okay, so we're all in agreement on the First Amendment. So, can I get a motion on the First Amendment? Actually, Delegate Healy, do you want to?
I'll move that as we
Can
discussed.
you reiterate exactly what your amendment will do, please?
Okay, it adjusts the amendment that was before us to say that Baltimore City, if they decrease the speed limit, they can return it to its original speed without any further study, except through the Complete Street program.
Right, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment that Delegate Healy presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. This is wonderful. Can't tell you how happy I am. Okay, so the second amendment, and it's the last one, is should Baltimore City decide to reduce the speed limit, that if they also
Not Baltimore City, this is statewide.
I'm sorry, state, okay, that's right. Then the Second Amendment would say that if they then decide to put in a speed camera system, that they have to do a study. Is that the gist of it, Patrick, as we discussed?
That's the gist of it. It literally reads that they may not use a speed monitoring system to enforce speed limits on a portion of a highway in which the speed limit has been decreased without performing an engineering study.
Okay,
Move the amendment.
okay. Is there a second?
What?
I'll
That's a
second, but I have
statewide
a
event.
question.
Okay,
Yeah. But I'll second so that we can have discussion.
Okay.
So then my,
discussion.
yes, so then my question then is this have any bearing on any of the legislations that we have passed out this year, or, yeah? Would this preempt any of those?
That's a good question.
Mm.
Patrick, I'll
Patrick?
give the answer to that.
I don't believe so. I mean, the 83 is not part of the Complete Streets program, I do not believe. So that's the only possibility.
But so the way that I'm reading this, and not being a lawyer, that any jurisdiction can't use a speed monitoring device or system anywhere where you're going to decrease without performing an engineering study. So this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with complete streets, is what the way that I'm understanding.
Well, there's only one jurisdiction under current law that can lower its speed limits without an engineering study, and that's a small portion of Calvert County. If this bill passes, Baltimore City would become the second one.
And this,
I don't think I understand this amendment.
but this piece will apply to all, including
Anybody else that comes in later wants to decrease speed limits without an engineering study.
right. So this would set the standard for the state.
Right.
So I think what this does, and the reason I appreciate it, is it's making sure that a jurisdiction isn't going to decrease speed limits and then throw a camera in there and trap motorists. If they're going to decrease the speed limit, they've got to, and they want to put a camera in there, they've got to perform the traffic and engineering investigation.
That's exactly
We're
it.
seeing a lot more cameras. We're seeing a lot more addressing speeds. So I think this is a amendment that looks forward and makes sure that we're setting some parameters as different jurisdictions approach cameras and speeds at different times in different ways.
So can I throw a monkey wrench in there, I think? So,
Sorry, can you go ahead, Delegate Boyd?
Okay. So let's say the Complete Streets
Thank you very much.
engineering studies shows that a street that potentially was there, let's talk about my street, right? It's a secondary street to Greenmount Avenue. We've gotten stop signs, whatever it is, to try to slow down the traffic because people literally go 50 to 60 miles an hour on a 25-mile-an-hour street. So we've done the engineering. It shows that it needs to be a 15-mile-an-hour street. So the engineering has already been done. The study has already been done. And then I decide, because maybe we've had an incident or two, that we do want to put in a camera. Would Baltimore City be allowed to use the study that has already been done to put a camera in locations where there have been incidents, or would they then have to do yet another study?
So Patrick,
I have to do another study.
don't they have to do a study that's specifically a speed camera study?
Well, no,
Or is there-
this is talking about an engineering study on lowering the speed limits. I mean, it's theoretically, if they do a study and it says they should drop it down to, well, 15 is not in the law, but if the study says they should drop it down, then they should drop it down at that point. But if they've got a study, then they can drop the speed limit.
Yeah, as
I
I
guess-
read this, Regina,
Yeah.
I think Baltimore City would be fine because they've done the Complete Streets, which includes an engineering and traffic study.
No, it doesn't.
No,
It
it
doesn't.
doesn't. No.
I
That's
thought
why we need the bill.
I thought that,
When they say an
conversation that we
engineering and
had.
traffic, when they say an engineering and traffic investigation, that means for that specific street.
That location.
Streets statute is a citywide. So they used engineers to do a citywide analysis, but they didn't do an engineering study on each particular street, which is what is currently required.
Brooke, is it more Complete Streets is more of a kind of manual or a guide as to what Baltimore City would like to do moving forward, kind of a general policy? This is generally what we're doing moving forward, but it's pretty specific.
Yeah, it's not super general, like it's a very dense book, but it's not, it's not the 1700 block of Alisana. We've studied the traffic driving back and forth on that block, and this is what it looks like, which is what is currently required right now. Basic traffic and engineering investigation, that's what they mean. They mean they monitored traffic for X number of days on X block and measured it, and this is what they found. That is not, we did not do that for every block of Baltimore City streets.
Right. Delegate Healy?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Patrick, the statewide speed monitoring law that we passed and that's active now, I thought that when we passed that, it had in there that the speed limits had to align with, accepted. I mean, you couldn't be arbitrary about setting the speed limits, that you had to follow some kind of standard.
Correct.
Isn't that the case? So this is like this is enforcing that aspect of it, right?
You're correct.
Okay.
I think I zoned out for a minute. This second part of this bill, when we say any stretch of highway, that's just 83, isn't it?
Yeah.
No,
State
no.
highways could be any size, shape.
Yeah.
You live on a highway, even that little small street you live on, that's a highway.
Oh, well, okay. That's weird. That doesn't make sense.
That's what the code says. That's
Okay.
how Maryland code refers to it.
Oh, okay. So every street in Baltimore City is a highway.
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's confusing.
Mhm.
So this is saying that if we lower the speed limit without doing an engineering study, like if the speed limit right now is 25 miles an hour near a school and it's on a street and so there's a speed camera there and we lower the speed limit to 15 miles per hour, can we enforce it at 25 miles per hour, but not at 15 miles per hour? Or do we have to take the speed camera away entirely?
You can't do a speed camera less than 20 miles per hour at all.
Right, so that's number one. Number two, if the speed camera is already there, then I don't think that this amendment affects that. Is that correct, Patrick? If the speed camera is already existing, they don't need to do a study because they've already done the study to put the speed camera there originally. Although it would be changing the speed limit, so maybe, I don't know.
Well, if you change the speed limit, you'd probably have to take the speed camera out
Why?
because you cannot use a speed monitoring system to enforce speed limits on any stretch of highway for which the speed limit has been decreased without performing an engineering and traffic study.
Okay, that's not okay then. I don't think we should have to, I think if existing cameras aren't impacted, then I'm okay with it. But if it's going to impact existing cameras, then that's not okay. Because then it would make the roads actually less safe because we couldn't enforce the speed limit that then we were lowering where there had already been a camera.
So is there an opportunity, Patrick, to do something similar like we did with the last amendment, which I'll call the Healy Amendment?
Yeah.
Is there a way to say that if the speed camera, and the reason I say this is because if the speed camera is actually already there, then they had to
Right.
do an engineering study in order to place said speed
Right.
camera there.
Right.
Hey, we could just say implement instead of use.
Okay. So that would allow for, okay, that's, I feel like that's an okay, happy medium.
Do you think that gets at the intent, Patrick?
I might find a different word, but something like that.
Okay, but conceptually, this makes everybody, this works.
Well, I wouldn't think it would work with Delegate Love because this creates that trap. You have a speed camera now for 25 miles an hour, maybe 30, and then you're decreasing it overnight to 15. But that speed,
You can't go below 20.
all right, so you decrease it from 30 to 20 overnight, And then the next day, they're starting to get speed. They thought they could go 38 miles an hour because it's 8 miles an hour over in that zone and not get a ticket. Now it's 20. And they didn't do a study or anything to back that up.
Right, but thank you, Delegate Parrott. I appreciate that. But I understand what Delegate Boyce and Delegate Lehrman were saying. So I'm going to stand down on that comment, and I think implement makes some sense. But I appreciate your bringing that up.
Liam, you have your hand up. Did you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we're getting this authorization. It will not lead to overnight, like every single speed limit in the city changing. There's going to be a very thoughtful approach to this. And I think this is great dialogue. I think what we can do with these amendments is just tell our team, if we use this new authorization to lower the speed limit, be very strategic, because there's going to be regulations on how that could impact where, an automated speed monitoring system could go. I do think that this is a really important discussion. But there's a whole set of other regulations that are in place that are tied to automated speed cameras, including advertising, putting the stuff out to bid, appropriate signage, stuff that I think should, address some of the concerns that are being discussed.
Okay, Liam, so with that said, I think that there is a good point being brought up, and that is that if the speed limit is reduced based on the passage of this bill, and there's a new speed limit with an existing speed camera, I guess, well, you're reducing the speed limit.
They'll have to do a new engineering study.
Yeah, you can't, there would have to be, we'll obviously loop in the ATVS division, which is DOT's automated camera operations division. They'll be looped in on this, but we'll just have to make our traffic division, which, they're currently the ones that focused on speed limits and conduct the studies. And, one of our traffic engineers was the lead complete streets manager. We'll have to get everybody in the same room and say, you have to be very careful and thoughtful about how you apply this new authority, because the state is granting us authority that not everybody else has. So, it needs to be applied carefully and thoughtfully.
Okay, thank you. The reason I want to hone in on this just a little bit is because before I was here, the first year I came down here, Delegate Malone was the chair of the subcommittee. And we had a couple of some reform speed camera bills. And he was done. Like, apparently he had been working on years on it. And I don't know if you can speak to that, Delegate Healy, or Patrick, if you can, but I think it's really important that we do everything we can to get the policy as close to perfect as we can, because the reason when I came down here was there was a big mushroom cloud. Like, I came in and I don't know, maybe Delegate Jacobs, you can remember too, but when I came in, it was in the news. It was a really big mess. So that's why I think it's important trying to get this as close as possible for the members of the subcommittee that aren't aware of what happened in the past, which is why we try to take so much care moving forward. Delegate Healy.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to comment a little bit. The development of the statewide bill that was passed was a long and tortured one. It had been in front of the Environmental Matters Committee for many years before I got on the committee. And I was on the committee when we finally passed it. And it was very, very controversial. That's why we put in all of these guardrails around it. And I was reluctant at the beginning, like most people were. So it was like getting comfort level for a lot of people to having it set at 12 miles above the posted speed limit. That was required. The Senate wouldn't pass it unless we put 10 miles. The Senate put it up to 12 miles. Every little thing about it was and the cameras don't only focus on the license plates, and they have to be legible, not just visible. And they're like all these little details that went into it. And then after it was implemented, as Delegate Fraser Hidalgo said, there were serious problems in some locations when the the companies that were hired in some locations, it didn't work well. And people were getting tickets, and people were very suspicious. They thought that the companies were raking in money from it. And it was mostly in the Baltimore region where the big problems were. And so that's why Delegate Malone, who was from Baltimore County, had enough by the end of it, because it was just so hard to get any tweaking. Since then, though, I think it has been shown that it's, in most places, I know in Prince George's County, there's a comfort level with it as a safety measure, as something that changes behavior, and not as what was characterized as a money grab by the localities. So, but that's why all these little things are in the statewide law to make it palatable. It was hard to craft it in the first place, but times have moved on, and people in a lot of places are much more comfortable with the concept. I have constituents that want more. They want cameras for a lot of other things. They want them for stop signs and one-way streets and all kinds of stuff. So that culturally, things have moved on since we passed that, but not for everybody. So it's going to be a challenge on the floor, no matter what we do.
Okay.
Maybe I
Thank you.
can bring in big pictures of my street for people.
Well, I think we're in a good place now with the amendment, the way we talked about it. Does anybody else have any conversation? Patrick, can you just review what looks like we agreed to?
Well, I would word it, I've been playing with it a little bit. A local jurisdiction may not implement a new speed monitoring system to enforce speed limits on any stretch of highway for which the speed limit has been decreased without performing an engineering and traffic investigation.
Okay.
Patrick? When that, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, Delegate Love. And Delegate Harrison, just so you know, you're not on mute, so everybody hears you reading.
So when you say implement a new speed monitoring system, would that include a single camera? Because that says to me an entire new system.
A system is one unit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Helpful.
Delegate Healy, did you have
For the
any-
record can be
Oh,
stated.
no, I'm sorry. I should have taken it down.
Sorry, thank you. I'm sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
I just saying for the record, it could be stationary or mobile.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Just-
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Because I know we have to move the amendment. I just want to hear it clarified one more time before we potentially agree and move the amendment. If you don't mind, Patrick, I'm sorry.
No.
The local jurisdiction may not implement a new speed monitoring system to enforce speed limits on any portion of a highway for which the speed limit has been decreased without performing an engineering and traffic investigation.
That works.
What did you
That's good,
say?
I think.
That's great.
Move the amendment.
Second.
All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion on the amendment carries. Okay, so now we have a bill. We've made the amendments. We have a bill before us. So on the bill as amended,
Move the bill, Mr. Chair.
Second.
One more question on that.
we have a first and a second and time for discussion. Yes, Delegate Parrott.
Great. My question is, who's going to set the speed limit? It seems to me that it doesn't have to be Baltimore City DOT. It could be the mayor or the planning department, basically anybody.
You know what? I will let Liam answer that question. My understanding is that it would, according to,
DOT.
yeah, that would
It
be.
doesn't have to be. And if there's no engineering study, there's no reason engineering has to have it except for to put up the signs.
Why don't we let Liam, Liam, you feel comfortable taking that one?
Yeah, it would be DOT. I think it would be irresponsible to have any other entity set it. And that could cause liability.
Correct. Could
Liam,
we
do you see any,
making that
do you see any
amendment to the
condition?
bill?
Sorry, I heard two people.
Go ahead, Delegate Parrott.
Sorry. I was wondering if we'd be comfortable making that an amendment to the bill too, just to specify that it would be Baltimore City DOT who would set that speed limit.
So there's federal requirements. So I just don't, my opinion from the perspective of DOT is that it's not necessary, but I'll defer to the
And
subcommittee.
Liam, can you expand a little bit on that? Are you saying that the federal requirements prohibit to what Delegate Parrott is saying, the mayor from just making that change, that it has to be changed or it has to be made as policy through the Departments of Transportation? That's federal.
That is my understanding. So there's a number of corridors in the city that are designated as being eligible for federal funding for, road projects. So this can't be done haphazardly at an ad hoc manner.
Okay, Patrick, do you know, is that this federal law supersede in this case? There's no way that.
No, Liam would be more familiar with that one than I would. All I know is that no other county has this requirement.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Mr. Chair. I mean, we have a lot in there about Prince George's County and Montgomery County, and I believe it was at Calvert. And we don't say that for any of the other ones.
I don't think we need to either.
No, the
There's a
mayor
difference.
nor the planning department sets speed limits. I think it's just a bit of a stretch.
There's a difference in this bill than all the others. This is the only one that says that an engineering department study is not required. So if it's not required,
Says it for Calvert too.
although that's one little.
Yes, but it is a precedent.
Okay,
Delia, what is the problem you're trying to solve?
That the decision would be made through the appropriate authority, which would be the Department of Transportation of the City of Baltimore.
But that's what they do now. The mayor has never set the speed limit.
Right, but with this bill, they could change it because now engineering is not
I
required.
think it's a stretch, Delegate. I think it's a bit of a stretch.
I think this is a solution in search of a problem.
Delegate Harrison.
But on the part where he's talking about, that doesn't even pertain to Baltimore City. If I'm understanding, this is, oh, I'm sorry, maybe you are referring to that. I was still stuck on that last amendment. But the complete, are you talking about where they have to do the complete streets and they don't have to do the engineering? Is that where, Delegate Parrott?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, no, I disagree with you on that as well. I've never known an executive branch to make a unilateral decision like that. It's the departments of transportation and whatever jurisdiction is always the one who looks at the roads and determines the speed limits. I've never known of any others, so that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, we're not.
Well, we're on the bill as amended. We've had a first, a second, and now we're in discussion. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna be excused.
Okay, the bill.
I want to say something though, Dave. If
Oh, go ahead. Yep, please.
I voted for this bill, but I'm not comfortable with this lack of engineering. But I voted for it. I voted for complete streets, and I'm taking them at the word that, they've done the due diligence in this process, but it does make me uncomfortable, even this discussion. But I'm trusting that the process is going to work out, but I just want that on the record that I really don't favor these projects without proper engineering.
Yeah.
Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I just want to remind Delegate Parrott that if you're going to be excused, you really can't participate in the discussion either. You can abstain, and if you don't want to go on the record voting one way or another, but if you're excused under the rule, that means you have a perceived conflict of interest and you should not be participating in the discussion either.
So to answer that, the part of the discussion that I took part in had nothing to do with my profession. I just said it should be part of the Department of Transportation. So I
Okay,
I
got
that
it.
had nothing to do with my conflict. Thank you.
I
Thank
actually
you for
didn't even-
clarifying.
Thank you. I didn't even hear that. Are you saying that, I thought you were just voting against the bill? What are you doing?
I'm excused.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We have, we'll have more voting, so don't worry. Just